Hello and welcome to Come to Chat application. My name is Shahan Waqi and I will be your teacher for this course. In this course, we are going to learn .NET 7, Angular 14, SignalR, and create a chat application using all these three technologies. And then we are going to make a production of our Angular application and hosting that inside our API project. And finally, we are going to publish our application to Azure. So we are going to create a chat application from scratch and all the way to publish it to the Azure and make it available to the internet. I am so glad to be your instructor to teach some practical application, and I hope you will enjoy the course. And I hope you will learn something to use in your own project or career. And you can put your .NET and Angular knowledge together to build a very cool application. Let's see the end result of the application that we are going to build. So our application starts with a simple form, and we need to register our name. I'm gonna put John for my name. And then we can submit our name. And once we have submitted our name, we can see a chat application. And this is responsive. So if I resize my page, I can see everything is stacked on top of each other. And I can see all online users here. And this is my name, and this is shown as green. So in order to replicate a real world scenario, I have opened two more browsers. So I resize this one. And inside my middle browser, I log in as Peter. And as soon as I put Peter there, inside John browser, I can see Peter has came online. And inside my third browser, I put Kyle. And everybody can see who's online, and they can see their user account as green. And inside my message, I'm going to say hi from Kyle. And when I send, everybody in the other browser can see the new message. And as well as public message, we are going to implement private message. So for example, if Peter would like to connect Kyle, all he needs to do is double click on Kyle. And then a new modal appears and he can send hi from Peter. And when I send, if I open Kyle browser, I can see a new pop-up coming up. And that's a private message between Peter and Kyle. And if I say I am good, from the other browser, I can see I am good in here. And for this application, we are going to start from scratch, all the way to publish our application to the internet. And I hope you will enjoy this course. Okay, first of all, we need to install Node.js. We navigate to Node.js website, and in here, I'm going to install Node 1619. So I need to click on downloads, and then inside all downloads, I have to look for 1619. So this is the one that I'm going to install. And depending on your operating system, you need to install. Or there's another way to install Node.js. And if you would like to have different Node modules installed on your machine. So in that case, you need to uninstall whatever your current Node.js is. So in order to do that, you need to uninstall from your control panel and your current Node.js. Then you need to search for npm. And from the first link, then you scroll down and then click on Windows WSL, then npm Windows, and from here you click on download now, and from here click on npm setup.exe. So before installing npm, you need to uninstall your current Node.js, and after install your npm, you need to open your command prompt as administration. Then you can type npm list. So right now I have 3 Node.js installed, but when you do this command, you don't have anything. So you need to type npm install and then put the version number of the node you would like to install. So for example, 16990. And then you hit enter. And then you can use npm use, and then you can choose any version of node that you would like to use. So for example, if I type 14.16.1, now if I type node -- version, I can see my node version is 14.61. If I type npm use. Then my node version is 1619. And after this, you need to install Angular. So the way we do, we type npm install -g at Angular CLI at 14. So we're going to use from Angular 14 for this course. If you already have installed Angular, you need to uninstall that. So the way you do, just put uninstall -g at Angular and remove this. But I'm going to install that, so I remove uninstall and I put I, and I means install, and then 14, and I press enter. Then you can verify your Angular by type ng version. Then you can see your Angular 14, whatever the current version of the 14 is installed, and npm and your node version. And after you successfully install Node.js and Angular, then you need to install VS Code. So we're going to use VS Code for coding our Angular, and we are going to use Visual Studio to coding our API project. So first of all, you need to install VS Code, and you can download that, and I assume you already have that. And then go to Visual Studio and click on the first link, and you can install community version for free. So if you click on downloads, and you can click on free download for community version. Once everything is installed and set up, then we open our Visual Studio 2022, and then we're going to create a new project. So I click on create new project, and then I choose web API. And from here, I choose ASP.NET Core Web API. Then click next. And for the solution name, I type come to chat. And for the project name, I type API. So my project name is API and my solution name is come to chat. And I hit next. And I choose .NET 7. Then I hit create. Once your API project is created, then you can hit the run button. And this is going to install a self-signed certificate. You can hit yes. And then you click advance and accept at the risk and continue. And you can see Swagger is open, and you can get and try it out, execute, and you can see this works. So I stop my application. In this section, we're going to clean up some of the default classes, such as weather forecast. So I remove weather forecast, and then from the controller, I remove weather forecast controller. And then I double click on API, and I'm not going to use any nullable or implicit usings. And I would like to manually use any usings. So if I remove this and I save, I'm going to have some errors. So I need to bring the required using. So I control dot and I hit enter, and for here I control dot and I hit enter. And for anything that is red, I do the same. And then I open my properties and launch settings. We're not going to use any HTTPS for the development, so I remove HTTPS here. And for the HTTP, I'm not going to use any Swagger, so I put false in here. And later in this course, we're going to use IS Express for the deployment and testing for the deployment. But for now, since we're here, I put false as well here. So we're not going to use any Swagger things for our project. And I save, and then I navigate to my program.cs, and I remove this part since we're not using any Swagger. And I'm going to remove my Swagger service as well. So it depends on you. You can leave it there or you can just remove it. I'm going to remove it because I'm not going to use it. And then I save everything. In this application, we're not going to use any SQL Server or any database. We're just going to use from SignalR. And we're going to use server memory to remember any online users. Since we're not dealing any SQL Server, we're not going to have any entities model. But we're going to use from some controllers. And the first controller that we're going to use, inside my controller folder, I right click, add, and controller. I select controller. Then I choose API, and I choose API controller empty. And I hit add. Then I remove the values and I name as chat. So this should be chat controller. And then we're going to use services, and we name it as chat services. So inside my API, I right click and I create a new folder and I name it as services. And inside there, I create a class and I type chat service. In this service, we are going to add our online users into our server memory. So the way we do, I'm going to have a private static read-only dictionary. So this dictionary is basically a list, and we have specified that this has a key and a value, and we name it as users. If I would like to give an example, so this is key and the second is value. So for example, we're going to have our first user, John, and the value for that is some random text string. And then the second one is going to be David, and the second key is going to be some random text as well. So John is going to be our key, and the value for John is going to be the second string. And this will hold our online users and will remember our online users as long as our server is running. So if you don't understand the second value, this is going to be the connection ID, and SignalR is using connection ID to keep track of who is connected and who is not connected. And then I type public bool add user to list and string user to add. Then I'm going to log my memory of users, and then I say for each while user in users if user dot key dot lower to lower is user to add dot to lower, then return false. Then after the for each we type users dot add user to add, and then I put null, and then I return true. In here we're trying to add user to our list, and we are going to lock the users because if two users are connected simultaneously, so we would like to do one by one. That's why we are using lock, and this is locking our users. So as long as this is locked, no other user can be added to our dictionary. And then inside here I'm looping through my users, and as I explained earlier, my key is the value of username. So I'm checking if the username to lower is whatever is going to be added to the list to lower. I'm going to compare these two in lowercase scenarios because there might be some scenarios that like John with capital O is added to our list, and a new user with John with all lowercase is going to be connected to our chat. So, but the username should be unique. That's why we are going to compare every characters in lowercase. So if I find anything, I'm just simply return false, and I'm not going to bother adding. But if I don't find anything and this has continued, then I'm going to add my user to add to the list. And my value for now will be null because I'm going to use this method inside my chat controller. And things will make more sense as we complete our project. And for the second method, I have public void add user connection ID, and then I have a string of user and then string of connection ID. So this method will be triggered inside our chat hub. So I once again lock my users, and then I check if users that contain key user. Then users in the index of user equals connection ID. So in this method, I'm once again locking the users, and then I'm checking if my dictionary, which is a list, has key with user. So as I explained here, so the first one is key and the second one is the value. So John is a key and Dave is a key, but the connection ID is the value. So I'm checking if my users has the key of whatever I'm passing here. If so, then I would like to add my value, which is in here is a connection ID, into this index. So I have a typo here. So this should be connection. And I just correct that here as well. Then the next method is public string get user by connection ID and string of connection ID. As I noticed, this O should be lowercase o. And back to our new function, then again I lock my users once again. Anytime I would like to do something with my dictionary, I'm locking that. So that's why you see lock every time. And then here I say return users that where x goes to x, and then x dot value is connection ID. And then I select x goes to x, x dot key, and then first word default. So this method is going to give me my user by the connection ID I'm passing. I'm using a link expression here, and it goes through all the users, and then it checks for whatever the value is, because as I explained here, my second string is value, and it's checking for the value if that value is matching the connection ID. Then it selects only the key because I am interested in the username. So my key is a username. Then I need to use first or default. If I'm not using that, I'll have some error message. And as I hover over, it says cannot implicitly convert type IEnumerate string to a string. So that's why I'm using first or default. Then the next method is going to be similar. So I copy this and I paste it down here. And I say get connection ID by user. And in here we have user. Then instead of value, I'm going to check with the key. And then this is user. And then I'm interested in the value. So this functionality is the reverse of the above functionality. And then we have public void remove user from list. And then we have string of user. Then once again, I like my users. So here I'm checking if users that contain key and user. If so, then users that remove user. I'm taking out my user from my value list of dictionary. So basically for example, I'm taking out John from this array. Then the last one is public string get online users. And as the method name is explaining, we are getting a list of all users. So once again, I like my users, and then I return users.order by, because I would like to order them by their username, and then x goes to x.key.select, x goes to x.key to array. So key is the username as I explained here, and we are selecting only the key, which is the username. We're not interested in the connection ID, and then we're returning as an array. And once we are done with this chat service, then I navigate to my program.cs, and inside my services, I need to add that as a service. So underneath here, I type builder.service.add singleton, because we're going to use singleton type for chat service. And I select chat service and I put the parentheses. And I'm going to save everything. Then I'm going to add a new endpoint inside my chat controller. So I open my chat controller. For here, I'm trying to inject my chat service, so I need to inject inside the constructor. So I type CTOR and I press double tap. So that's how you can create your default constructor inside your chat controller. Then in here, I type chat service and I name it as chat service, and just above I type private read-only chat service and I put underscore chat service. Then in here I copy this and here I paste it to chat service. That's how we are doing the dependency injection for chat service. Then my only endpoint is going to be HTTP post, and then I name it as register user. Then I put enter. Then we have public iAction result and I name it as register user. And this is going to take a model, and the model is going to be user DTO, and I name it as model. Then I open and close my curly brace, and then I'm going to create my user DTO class. So I need to create a new folder. So inside my API, I right click and add new folder, and I name it as DTOs. Then inside my DTO, I right click and add a class, and I name it as user DTO. And in here, I am going to have a single property, which is a string of name. So I put prop tab tab. So if you wonder how I did that, it's prop tab tab. Then you can have a new property. Then just above here, this is going to be required. So I'm using data annotation, and I'm going to use a string length 15, and minimum length is 3, and error message is. And in here, I'm checking if whatever the user is passing has less than 3 or above 15 characters. If so, then I'm going to display this error message. Then I head back to my chat controller and I'm going to bring my user DTO. So if I put control dot, I can see using API.dtos. Then the error goes away for user DTO. And in here, I'm checking if chat service dot add users to list, and I pass my model dot name. If that is successful, then return no content, which is a 202 status code. If for some reason that gets passed to here, so return a bad request, and I say, so my add user to list is going to return a boolean, and the way we are returning false if that name is already inside our array. If so, then we return false, and if that is false, we return a bad request and we simply say that this user is taken. Otherwise, if this returns true, at this stage we have added the user to our list and we return true here. And then we just simply return no content, which is 202 status code. After I finish with my controller, I save everything and I'm going to create a new folder, and that's going to be called hubs. And that's how we have SignalR functionality in there. So I name it as hubs, and then inside here I'm going to add a class and I name it as chat hub. Then my chat hub is deriving from hub, and if I control that in here, I can see using Microsoft ASP.NET Core SignalR. So that is installed by default inside our API project. And then I'm going to create a constructor. So I type CTOR and tab. Then I'm going to inject my chat service in here as well. So I type chat service and chat service. Then I copy this, and in here I say private read-only chat service of underscore chat service, and then underscore chat service is chat service, and I put semicolon in here. And my first method is going to be public override async task on connected async, and I need to bring task, and this should be on with capital C connected async. And this is default functions inside hub class. So whenever the user is connected to this hub, it's going to trigger this function. Then I'm going to have await groups dot add to group async, and then we have context dot connection ID, and the name of the group we're going to name it as come to chat. And then we're going to have await clients dot caller dot send async and user connected. And we're going to have a public override async task on disconnected async and exception. Then I'm going to tell await base dot on disconnected async exception. So I'm going to bring my using the system if there's an error here. And these two functions are the default inside our hub. And this is whenever the user is connected, and this is whenever the user is disconnected. And we need to stick to these names. So these names has to match exactly as I type in here. So this is on connected async, and this is on disconnected async. And we're going to pass our exception to the base class. So this is pretty much the default code that we need to bring. And there is nothing that we can change in here. Just right above here, I'm telling await groups that remove from group async, and then context dot connection ID, and then from this group that I just created. So whenever the user is connected, they're going to have a connection ID, and we're going to add that connection ID to our group. And the name of our group is come to chat, and we're going to trigger some method inside our Angular, and that's called user connected. That's why we are telling clients.caller. And if the user is disconnected, we're going to remove that connection ID from the come to chat group, and then this is the default code for the undisconnected. I explain more as I write my Angular side, and things get more sense as we complete our application. Then I open my program.cs, and I need to add my SignalR to the service. Just after my chat service, I type builder.service.add SignalR. So I'm adding the SignalR service to my application. Then I need to add my hubs chat to my pipeline. So after my app.map controllers, I put enter, and then in here I say app.map hub. Then I pass my chat hub as a type, and in here I specified the path. The path is hubs/chat. So I'm telling my middleware that if the user is going to this path, then they will connect to our chat hub. Basically, they're going to trigger this functionality and they will be connected to chat hub. After everything is complete, then we save everything and we're going to start writing code for our Angular site. Okay, let's create our Angular project. First of all, I open my command prompt and I verify that I have installed my Angular CLI. So at the moment, I have Angular CLI 14.2.10 and my node is 16.19.0. Then I navigate to my project. So this is my project, and inside here, I copy the address, and from here, I change my directory and navigate to that. Then I type ng new and I name it as client app. And then I say yes for the routing and I pick CSS. I navigate to my client app and then I type code space and dot. Then I open this inside my VS Code, and then I'm going to open my terminal from my VS Code, and then I type ng serve-o in order to run the Angular application. Okay, my Angular application is running, so I'm going to remove some of the stuff. So I open src app, and inside my app component I remove the whole thing, and then I simply have a h1 and then come to chat and I save, and when I can see complete chat. Then we're going to install ng bootstrap. Inside my second tab I type ng bootstrap, and the first link ng-bootstrap, I open that, and we're going to use version 13 since we're using Angular 14. So make sure this is version 13, then I click on get started now, and then I navigate to the installation and I copy this ng add ng bootstrap /ng bootstrap, and then inside my second tab, so I open a new tab by clicking on the plus, then I paste that and I press enter. And then I type yes. ng bootstrap has been installed. So in order to verify that, I stop my application and I run my application one more time. Now I can see the effect of my Bootstrap. So that means Bootstrap has been installed successfully. And then I'm going to install SignalR. Then I type npm install at Microsoft/SignalR. And then I press enter. And I can verify that SignalR has been installed by navigating to package.json. So if I check here, I can see Microsoft/SignalR has been installed. At the moment, I would like to change my favicon, and we have a snippet attached to this lecture, and you have the logo and the favicon, so you can download that from there. So in order to do that, I navigate to my Angular project, and inside my client app and inside my SRC, I can see this favicon. So I remove this and I replace it with the one that I have downloaded from this section. But I have it over my desktop, so I just simply drag and drop it here. And since we're here, I'm going to, inside my assets, I'm going to create a new folder and I type it images. And then inside images, I copy and paste my logo. So if I open my browser and I refresh, then I don't see the new favicon. That's because I need to open this inside a new private window, or I clean my cache. So for simplicity, I just open my Chrome and then I paste that in, and I can see the new favicon. In this section, we're going to add a navbar and footer. So in order to do that, I open my VS Code, and inside my client app, then I navigate to SRC and app. Then in there, I type ng-gc in order to create a new component, and then the first one is navbar. And at the same time, I put double dash and skip test because I'm not interested in creating any .spec.ts file. So if I press enter, I can see my navbar has been created, and this has only 3 files. And then I'm going to do the same thing with footer. And we're going to have a home component. So again, I'm going to create my home component like this way. As of now, we have 3 components, and all these 3 components has been added to my declaration inside my app.modules. And this is done automatically once you create your components. Then inside my app dash routing module, inside my routes, I press enter here, and then I type curly brace and path, and the path is the default, so it's just simply empty string, and component is home component. Make sure this has been brought by the import, and we're going to assign the default path, which is localhost 4200. That's the default path, and whenever the user is going into that path, it's coming to home component. And then after that, I open my app.component.html, and instead of h1, I'm going to have app navbar, and I close, and this is my navbar. And then I press enter, and I have div.container, which is Bootstrap class, and empty 5, so I give it some margin top 5, and these are our Bootstrap classes. I'm not explaining very much of Bootstrap classes, but I'm going to use those inside my application. And then we have a router outlet in order to be able to use our router, and then just above this div we have app footer, and inside here I would like to give it some style and mean height 500 pixel. So at the moment we're going to have navbar and footer, and in between those we're going to have our router outlet, and our router outlet is going to use the default, which is the home component. So basically the home component will be replaced inside here. So if I save everything and I take a look at my browser, I can see navbar works, home works, and footer works, and this is the 500 pixel that we have specified, and this is basically the margin top of 5 from the Bootstrap class. Then I head back to my navbar, and I open my navbar.component.html. Then I remove this, and I'm going to have header, and then we have nav, and we have a class of, and then I press enter, and inside my nav we are going to have a div.container, and then I have a tag, and I remove my href, and inside here we have a class of nav brand, and I'll just give it some style. And then inside my a tag I'm going to have an image, so I type image and I press tab. Then inside my src I'm going to navigate to my assets, and for the alt I'll just simply say logo. And if I save and if I take a look, I can see my navbar has been created. Then I open my footer.component.html, and I remove this. Then in here I'm going to have a footer, and inside my footer we are going to use some classes of. Then I press enter, and we are going to have a div. Then inside here we have h6. Here we have copyright, some normal stuff of website, so we're going to have the copy sign. Then we're going to have a href, and if I save, if I take a look, I can see copyright come to chat. So I would like to add my current year. So in order to do that, and I would like that current year to be dynamic, so inside my footer.component.ts I'm going to have a property, and I name it as current year, and which is the type of number, and this is new date dot get full year. And then I copy my current year, and inside here I put inside double curly braces, and I place my current year there. If I save, click on file and save all, then I can see 2023 is coming. So I can put a space here, and then there's a space here. So then after this I head back to home, and I open home.component.html. Then in here I'm going to have a div and h1, and inside here we have, then I save everything, and if I take a look, I can see this. Let's get you connected and chat with other people. Then after this I'm going to have another div, then we're going to have an input, And after this, we have a label. And after this div, I press enter, and we are going to have another div of, and inside here we have a button, and I name it as submit. And if I save everything and I take a look, I can see my form. I would like to have a border inside here. So the way I do inside my form, I have a class of p3 and border. And if I save and I take a look, I can see some border in here. And if I resize my page, I can see this is responsive. So for larger screen, we're going to have a div of 5, and for a smaller screen, we're going to have the full div, and that's how we have specified in here. And I would like to have some more padding in here. So inside here, I'm going to have margin top of 5. And if I save, I can see more padding from the top. Now I would like to have a reactive form. So the way I do, I head back to my Angular, and inside my app module, I am going to import. After ngB module, I put comma, then I type reactive form module. If I select this one, then this is automatically going to import this reactive form from Angular forms. And that's how we are going to create reactive forms. Then inside my home, so in here, I'm going to create a user form of type form group, which is new form group, and I simply initialize with empty object. Then I have submitted is false. This indicates if the form is once submitted or not. Then inside my constructor, I'm going to have private form builder of form builder, and in here I'm going to have a method. I name it as initialize form, and in here I say this.user form equals this.form builder dot group, and then I open parentheses, and then inside there I open curly braces, and then in here I have a name and I initialize it with empty string, and in here we have two validators. One of the validators is dot required, and the other one is validators dot min length and 3. Then the next one is validators dot max length 15. So the same validation we have described inside our API project. So if I open my API project, and inside my user DTO, I have specified 15.3 as a min and max length for my name property, and inside my chat controller, we're going to have this. So inside my Angular, I'm going to do the same thing for my user form for name property. Then inside ng on init, we're going to call our initialize form. So in order that Angular knows about our form. And in here, we are going to have a method called submit form. And this is when the form is submitted. So here we are going to say this.submitted is true. And here we say if this.userForm.valid and just console.log this.userForm.value. So if the form is valid, just simply console log our form. Then I need to bind my form to my user form. So in order to do that, I open my home component and inside my form. After here, I put the space and then I type inside the bracket form group. And then my form group is equals to user form. So I copy this and I place it inside this quotation. Then we have parentheses ng submit, and if the form is submit, where to call? So we would like to call submit form. So I copy this and I put it inside here, and I'm going to have autocomplete off. Then once I bound my form to my user form, I need to bind my input field to my whatever I have inside here. So the name is name basically. So inside my home component and inside my input, I'm going to have form controller name. So I select this and equals to name. That's because we have name it as name. And if I save everything and I can take a look and there is no error here. And if I open my browser and if I just open my console and I type something, if I submit, I can see my name is written here. And if I just don't do anything, I don't see any console log because the form is not valid. And if the form is not valid, then I won't hit this line of code. So I would like to show the user some error messages if they're not inputting some valid name. So the way we do, I close my console log, and then inside my home component of the HTML, I'm going to add isInvalid class to my input field if this has some error. So after here, I press enter and I open bracket and I say class dot is invalid if the form is submitted and user form dot get name dot errors. So basically I'm injecting isInvalid class inside my class if the form is submitted, and submitted we have defined in here. So at first submitted is false. Once the user clicks on the button for the submit, then we are setting submitted to true, and that's the first condition. So we would like to see if the user has clicked on the submit button, and then if the user form and inside my name, which is here, then if there is any errors inside here. And as we have described here, we are checking if the name is empty, that's one of the error, and if the name is less than 3, or if the name is above 15 characters. And for these three scenarios, we are going to have some errors, and that's how we are specifying in here. And if these two conditions are true, then we inject isInvalid class inside here. So for example, we are going to have isInvalid inside here, but Angular will input that for us. Then after my label, I'm going to have a span to display the error messages, and in here I'm going to have some class of text danger, and then I check. So the way we check inside Angular, we put asterisk ng if, and that's the way how we specify if statement inside HTML files. So asterisk ng capital I f, and then inside our quotation I check again if the form is submitted, and I put double ampersand for my second condition, and then I say user form dot get and name, and then again I put a question mark dot has error of required, and I put a single colon and I close my parentheses. So I'm checking if the form is submitted, and the second condition is if inside my user form I'm interested inside a name property and I have to spell it correctly, so this is name, and then if this property has some error of required, and that's the required is coming from. So if these two are true, then I simply say please choose a name. Then for the second condition, I copy my span and I place it down here, and instead of required, I'm going to have max length. Then after here, just before the closing quotation, I'm going to have or, and then I press enter and I copy user form.max length, and then in here I paste that, and in here we have min length. So if the form is submitted and the user form, the name property has max length or min length error, and we say your name. So if all these conditions are true, then we simply say your name must be at least 3 and maximum 15 characters. So I would like to test my functionality. I save everything, and inside my browser, if I hit submit, I can see please choose a name, and this is coming from here. And if I examine my form input, I can see isInvalid has been injected inside my input field. And if I type something, so I don't see the second error message, there must be some error in here. And the error is because this needs to be lowercase. So for min length and max length, they both needs to be lowercase. And if I save, and if I examine this situation once again, I submit, and if I put some one character, I can see the second error message. And if I in between 3 and 15, I don't see that error. As long as I'm going beyond 15 characters, I can see the second error comes again. This section, we would like to submit our form and send our form to our chat controller to register user endpoint. So I need to run my API application. Then I head back to VS Code and I'm going to add my API URL inside my environments. The way we find out our API URL, so inside my API project, inside launch settings, under properties, if I open that, I can see this is the API URL that I'm going to use. So I copy this and inside my environment.ts, I put a comma, then I say API URL and then colon, and I paste that in here. And then I open environment.prod.ts, that's the production. So in here I put API URL and just simply nothing, because we're going to deploy our Angular inside our API project. And then I need to create a service in order to call my API project. So inside my app, I right click and then I choose new folder and then I name it as services. And inside my services, I need to navigate to my services. So I type cd services and then in here we're going to create a new service. So I type nggs for the service and then I type chat and I skip tests. I can see my chat services is created in here. So I open that up. Then in order to make some API call, we need to import HTTP client module. So the way we do, we open up modules and after reactive forms, I put comma and I press enter and then I type HTTP client module and we don't see that coming. So I copy this and inside my import, I type import and I put semicolon. So my HTTP client module is coming from @Angular comment HTTP, and I can see the error has gone. So I head back to my chat service. Then in here, I'm going to inject my HTTP client. So I say private HTTP client of type HTTP client and make sure select the second one, not the third one. So this should be coming from @Angular comment HTTP, not from SignalR. So select this one. And if you examine the import, so you can see HTTP client is coming from @Angular /comment /HTTP. And then I'm going to create my very first method, so which is register user. And my register user is taking user object of type user, and we're going to create that very soon. And then in here we return this.http client.post, and then I open parentheses and I put backtick, and in here I put $, open and close curly brace, and environment. So make sure you select the first one, not prod. So if I select the environment, then we have API URL. So if I take a look here, I can see this is coming from src environments /environment. Then we have API, then we have chat and register user. And then I put comma and I pass my user model. And then in here, I can say response type of text and I press semicolon in here. So if I head back to my environment.ts, I need to put an additional /. So this coming from all the API URL and fit the / and then API /chat /register user. And that's how we have this defined in our chat controller. So in here we have the URL of our application, API application, then / API / the controller name. Our controller name is chat and / register user. And this is the endpoint that we are calling. So if I head back inside my app, I right click and I open a new folder and I name it as models. And then in here, I add a new file and I type user.ts. And inside here, I'm going to have export interface user, and this has a name and the type is string. If I have this in place, then I can head back to my chat service, and in here, if I control that, I can have add import from the location of the user. So the error has gone. Then I head back to my home component, and in here I remove my console log, and after this I need to call my chat services. So before this, I need to inject that inside my constructor. So I say private chat service of chat service. So I have injected my chat service, and then in here I say this.chatService.register user, and then we pass this.user4.value, and then we need to subscribe because we're calling an API. So I open parentheses, and then inside there I open curly braces. Then we have a next option, and we're going to do something later, but for now we're just simply open and close the curly brace. And then we have an error, so in case there is an error, so I put error in here and I name it as error, and I would like to save the error inside an array string. So I head back up, and in here I'm going to have API error messages of type string array, and I simply initialize to empty array. Then I go back, and inside here I say if, and just above here we simply set this to an empty array, this.api error message equals empty array. And inside next I can say console.log open chat. So I'm going to save everything. If I open my browser and if I click on console, I just type a name and I simply say John. If I hit submit, I can see an error message, and this is because of the course policy. I need to add course policy to my API project. So in order to do that, I open my API project, and inside my program.cs, just after SignalR, I say builder.services.add course, and I close this. And then inside my middleware, just before everything, I say app.use course, and then x goes to x dot allow any header, then dot allow any method, then allow credential, then with origins, and I need to copy my Angular URL and I place it in here. So http ://localhost : and I remove this, the extra / and I put a semicolon. Then I need to restart my API project. After my API project has been restarted, then I'm going to submit my form once again. If I click submit, then I can see open chat. This is because we have successfully passed our model to API project, and that is coming from here. Since there is no content, and the no content means success, then we can see console.log open chat. But I would like to see some bad requests and whatever the API is sending back. So I would like to see that underneath my input field. So the way we do, I open my home.component.html, and after this div, so my input field div, then I put another div, and we say class of form floating, and then we have a ng if statement, so I put asterisk ng if to have some Angular if statement, and I simply check for if API error messages dot length is greater than 0. Then if that is greater than 0, then I have a UL of text danger. Then inside my UL I have li, and inside my li I'm going to have a Angular for loop, so I have asterisk ng4, and then I say let error of API error messages. Then inside here I'm going to display my error. So I'm going to populate my error messages string array if we are seeing some error from our API call. And if there is some error and that type is not an object, then we simply push error.error to our API error messages. And the API error messages is simply an array of string. So if I save everything, and then if I just want to register with John with capital HN, and this should also give me an error because inside my chat services, I'm checking both into lowercase scenarios. So if I hit submit, I can see this name is taken. Please choose another name. And that is coming from this bad request. Okay, in this section, I would like to design my chat component. So I need to create my chat component. So I need to go one above. So I go to app, and then I create a new component, and I name it as chat, nggc chat. And I skip test as usual. Then I open my chat.component.html, and I remove this. we're going to have div.row. Then in here we have div.colarge2 to make it some responsive for different devices. Then we have div.dgrid. Then we have a button and the class is btn and the type is button, and I name it as back to home. And after this division we are going to have another division, so I type div. Then we have div.card. Then we have div and users. Then after this we have another div. Then in here we have a style of min height of 555 pixel, and I press enter, and inside my this division, and in here I'm going to list my all the users. So for each user we are going to have div dot, and then after here we have div dot call, and then we have div dot dgrid, and we list our user inside a button. So I type button, type is button, and then class is, and in here I'm going to type, for example, user1. Then in order to have another user, I copy this and I place it down here, and this is going to be user2. And instead of success we're going to have dark. Just underneath everything I'm going to inject my chat component. And if I save and if I take a look, I can see this is coming here. I would like to see my chat component if the form is submitted. So inside my home component.ts, I'm going to add another property and I name it as open chat, and I simply initialize it to false. Then inside my next, instead of console login, I simply say this dot open chat is true. Then inside my home.component.html, I'm going to put all this inside an ng container. So I type ng container and then I close this, and this is ng container from Angular. So this is just a block of code if we would like to have some if condition just above there. So I type *ng if equals open chat is false. So if the open chat is false, then I copy all this code and I place it in here. And then I'm going to have another ng container. So I type ng container. If open chat is true, then simply display chat component. So I remove all these extra new lines. And if I save everything, and if I go back here, I register with a new name, for example, user1, and I submit, I can see the register form is gone and my chat component is appearing. So I would like to have this back to home functionality. So the way we do, I open my chat.component.ts, and in here we are going to have a function called back to home, and we are going to output some variable into our parent component. So the way we do, just under here we simply have @output, and that is coming from @Angular core. So I select this one and make sure output is coming here, and then I name it as close chat emitter, since we're going to emit something to parent component. So I initialize it to new event emitter and make sure this is selected @Angular/core, and I open and close the parenthesis, and this is requiring an open and close parenthesis as well. Then in here I'm going to type this dot close chat emitter dot emit. We're simply telling the parent component that some value has been passed from the child component to the parent. So chat component is the children of the home component. And inside my chat.component.html, inside my back to home, I'm going to give this a click event. So I open and close parentheses and I type click, and then this button is clicked, then simply call back to home method. So I copy and I paste it in here. Then inside my home component, I'm going to have close chat emitter, and this is coming from the child component. So this is coming from whatever we have specified in here. So if that is coming, then call some method inside our home component. And what is the method? We name it as close chat, and we don't have this method yet, so that's why we see red. And then inside my home.component, I copy and paste the name, and we're going to create that method. And then in here, I simply say this.openChat is false. So if I save everything, if I open my browser and I rename as a new user2, then I can see the chat component is coming. If I hit back to home, I can see that I am being navigated back to home component, or basically the chat component is destroyed. So by this line of code. So in here, we're checking if the open chat is true, then display chat component. If open chat is false, then display this line of HTML codes. And I notice my user2 is there, so I would like to reset my for. So in order to do that, inside my home.component.ts, after this.chat is true, I say this.user4.reset in order to reset my for. And then I say this.submitted is false. So I'm setting submitted to false. And I would like to save my name inside my chat services. So I open my chat services, and in here I'm going to have a property and I name it as my name, which is type of string, and I simply initialize to empty string. And this my name is public, so I can access to my name from my home component because I have injected my chat services in here. So in here, after the form is submit and everything is successful, inside the next, then I can say this.chat_service.myname is this.user4.get and the property of name and then the value, and I put semicolon in here. And inside my chat component, inside one of my users for the success BTN success, I would like to display my name. So in order to do that, I need to inject chat service inside chat.component.ts, and I need to inject it as a public. So I say public chat service of type chat service, and then I copy chat service, and inside my chat.component.html, and instead of user1, I put it inside double curly brace in order to have Angular property, and then I type chat service dot my name. And if I save everything, and since this is restarting my Angular project, and if I type Mary and if I submit, I can see Mary is here. So this should be a card. I can see a typo in here. So inside chat.component.html, this is card. And if I save and if I type a new name, for example AAA, and I can see this is inside a border. Then I head back to my chat.component, and after this closing div, after call large 2, so after this I put enter, and I'm going to have div dot if I take a look, and since I don't want to submit every time, so I simply head back to my home component, and in here I'm going to initialize it to true. And if I save, then I can see my chat component is coming in here. So these are going to be the messages that the user is inputting. So for example, we are going to have user 1 some messages and user 2 some messages. If I save and I take a look, I can see user 1, user 2. Then we would like to have an input field underneath. So I head back to my chat.component.html, and then after div card body, I put enter, and then we have div.card footer. And in here we are going to use a form, and I autocomplete off. Then we have div.row, then we have div.call9, and we have an input, type is text, class is form control, placeholder is send message. and I close my input. Then after this div, we have a div of call tree. So if I save and I take a look, I can see my form is coming in here. I'm going to give this a style of min height of 500 pixel. So the same as we have in here. And then inside here, I'm going to give this some 400 pixel. So if I save, and I can see those are matching together. For example, we have a user that has written some large text, so I remove this and I put lorem and I put 50 characters and I enter. And if I reformat, Alt Shift F, so I can see some dummy text in here. And if I copy this and I paste it sometime, and if I save, I can see a scroll is coming in here. I need to stretch a little more my messages input. So in here, instead of 400, I'm going to have 450, and that's better. Okay, now it's time to connect our Angular to Chat Hub. So first thing first, I need to set this false because we temporarily set open chat to true. And then if I refresh, I can see this page. And then I open my chat service. And in here we have private chat connection of hub connection. Hub connection is coming from Microsoft SignalR. Then I'm going to have a method called create chat connection. Then in here I have this chat connection equals new hub connection builder. So I need to select this one from at Microsoft SignalR dist. Then I open and close parentheses. Then I have dot with URL, and in here I have backtick, then $, curly brace, environment dot API URL, and then right after here I have hubs and / chat. Then we have with automatic reconnect and dot build. So at this stage we have the chat connection and we have with automatic reconnect, so the user might disconnect, so that's why we use with automatic reconnect. And then we are going to build the connection, and after this inside the same method I'm going to have this chat connection dot start, and we're going to start the connection, and then for catching any error I'm just simply console logging the error. And then I have another method for stop chat connection. And in this method, I'm going to have this chat connection that stopped, and again catch any error if found. And then inside my chat, inside the TS, inside ng on init, I'm going to use my method inside the chat service. So I say this chat service dot create chat connection, and this will trigger this function, and this function will trigger starting my connection to the hub. And inside hub's chat hub, I'm going to connect it to this method. So once the start has triggered from here, so with automatic build, and then we are going to start the connection, and once we are hitting this stage, then we are going to be connected to the chat hub. So if I put a breakpoint and if I save everything in here, then I'm going to choose a name like John, and then I have been directed to is coming here, so I'm hitting this breakpoint. And then if I step forward, so every connection there is a unique connection ID. So for pretty much for this browser I have this connection ID, and this is the unique connection ID for this browser that I'm connecting to the chat hub. And then I'm in here, I'm going to trigger a method inside my Angular, but we don't have that at the moment. So I'm going to remove this breakpoint, and inside my chat service, just after my start, I put a semicolon. Then I'm going to have this chat connection on, and I need to copy exactly the name here as I specified, and then I paste it in here. And then inside here, we are going to have a callback function. So I put this, and then I can console log something here. So the server has called this, has called here. So if I save, open my console log and I register with John again. So this name is taken because I previously took this, so I just put a new name like John1. And once I do this, then if I open my console, then I can see the server has called here. So my server has brought me to this line of code. So what happens at first, we are trying to connect to the chat hub, and the chat hub is coming here inside my hub's chat hub. Then I'm trying to add whatever the connection ID that browser has to this group, and then after that I'm trying to call this endpoint from the Angular. So I'm going to remove this, and instead of that console log, I'm going to call an endpoint from chat hub. So in order to do that, just underneath stop chat connection, I'm going to have async add user connection ID, and then in here I have return this dot chat connection dot invoke, and then I have add user connection ID, and then I pass my name to the server. And again, if any error, then just console.log that. I need to make another method inside my API. So I copy this, add user connection ID, and I head back to my chat hub.cs. Just underneath on disconnected, I'm going to have public async task, and I paste that in here, add user connection ID. Then I'm receiving a name, and then inside here I'm going to pass that name to the my service that I have created in the previous section. So I have add user connection ID, and then this will look for a user like the name and the connection ID. So the first parameter is the name, and the second one is context dot connection ID. And as I explained earlier, every browser has a new connection ID. Even the browser tries to reconnect, then there's a new connection ID. So for every connection, there is a unique connection ID. And we would like to save that connection ID inside our dictionary. And where is our dictionary? That's inside our chat service. So inside here, we are going to take the first value, and the key is the connection ID. And we are going to trigger this function. So we're passing the name, which is the username in this case, and the connection ID. So if I run my application, and I'm going to put a breakpoint inside my chat hub. Inside add user connection ID, I'm going to put a breakpoint. And in here, once the server has called this method, so I'm going to right away call this method. So I say this dot add connection ID, and since my name is already inside my chat service, so I don't pass anything there. So this dot my name is already accessing to my name in here. So if I save my Angular, and if I try to, since I have restarted my application, my API application, I can use this previous name. So if I submit, then I will be caught in this breakpoint. And if I hover over, I can see John. And what exactly is happening? So basically, first of all, we're trying to start a connection. And once the connection is started, we are hitting this endpoint. And then from here, we are adding this connection ID to this group. And I named the group as come to chat. Then, so what happens in here, we are basically trying to start a connection. And once the connection is started, we are hitting this endpoint on connected async. And in here, we are trying to add the connection ID, as every browser or every connection has a unique ID, to this group. And I just named this group as come to chat. And then once this connection ID has been added, then I'm going to trigger a method inside my Angular. And that's why I'm telling clients.caller.send async. So whoever is calling, just trigger this part. So where is that part inside Angular? If I open, I can see user connected. And then, since I don't receive anything, I'm not passing anything with this. So that's why we have empty parentheses. Then once the server is calling here in this function, then I'm going to call another inside my chat service function. And that's called add user connection ID. And then in here, I'm trying to invoke an API function, which is this one. So that's why I can see dot invoke, and what is the name of the function is add user connection ID. I'm passing my name to that function as well. So in here, I am receiving in my name. That's why I can see John. And once the user is coming to here, then I am connecting. Then I am adding the connection ID to my name. So the only thing matters the most, that this add user connection ID should match this one, and user connected should match this one. So inside my chat hub and inside add user connection ID, I would like to do more stuff in here. So I stop my API application and I remove my debugger. Then I'm interested to get all online users. So in order to do that, we have var online users equals chat service dot get online users. And this basically is calling inside my chat service and here. So this basically returns an array of everybody has connected to, or everybody has been saved to this dictionary. Then inside my chat hub, I'm going to trigger another function in my Angular. So I say await clients dot capital C clients dot groups, and what is the name of a group? This one. So whoever has connected to this group, I'm going to trigger a function inside their Angular site, or basically inside their browser. And then I say dot send async, and then I name it as online users, and I'm going to pass online users. So I need to create this method inside my Angular. So every time we are trying to call from the server side to the Angular, we need to create in this create chat connection. But every time we're trying to trigger from Angular to server, we need to follow this format, and it has to be just in a separate method, but those has to be inside this create chat connection. So I put a semicolon in here, then I copy this and I paste it, and instead of this name, I'm going to have this name online users, and inside here we are going to have a parameters, and that is online users. Then I would like to pass my online user or assign inside an internal string array. So I scroll to the top, and inside here I'm going to have online users of string array, and I initialize it to empty array. Then I copy this, and inside here I'm going to have this dot online users equals, then I make a spread operator online users. So basically I'm substituting any values that is already inside online users with whatever is I'm receiving. Then I have my online users populated at this stage. So I head back to my chat.component, and inside here, so I would like to make this division into a for loop. So the way I do, after margin top quotation, I put asterisk ng4, and I say let user of chat service dot online users. So since my chat service inside my chat component is public, so I can access inside my HTML. Then this becomes a loop, and we are going to have a multiple online users if we have so. So I have extra dummy user, so I'm going to get rid of this. I need to have user just simply as user. So if I save inside my chat.component, I'm going to just restart my API application anyways. Okay, my API application is restarted. I'm going to connect with John. So I can see John in here, and in here I'm going to connect with David, and I can see David and John. So at both browser, I can see it both coming simultaneously. And if I open a new browser and I reconnect with a new name, so for example Smith, then I can see Smith is coming in here as well. But if I come back in here and I put a new name, I can see Smith is there, so I don't want that. So I want Smith to be gone. So I'll do this in the next video. Okay, in order to remove the users from the list, we have to do something inside on disconnected async. First of all, I remove the connected connection ID from my groups. That's what I'm doing in here. And then I'm going to get the user from my connection ID. And we already have that method inside our chat service. And that one is here, get user by connection ID. So if I go back and I can here say var user. So first of all, I stop my application and I say equals chat service dot get user by connection ID, and I pass the connected connection ID. Then I can remove that user from the list. So I say chat service dot remove user from list, and I pass the user. Then I'm going to get the online users. So I copy these two and I paste it over here. Or instead we can have a private method. So I'm going to have a private async task, and in here we have display online users, and instead I'm going to cut this and I paste it in here so I can make a use of that function. And in here I'm going to call that method. So I say await display online users, and then I close with the semicolon. And for this method, add user connection ID. So in here I can simply use this one. So instead of these two, I have only one single line, and this will trigger that functionality for me. So whenever the user is disconnected, they will be removed from the list. So I'm going to run the application, and whenever they are removed from the list, then I'm going to send the new list of my online users to everybody who is connected to this group name. So I open my all browsers and I navigate to the previous page. Then I'm going to have another browser here. So here I log in as John. So I can see John here, and here I log in as David. And I can see David here. So David is going to hit back to home. So I don't see that removed from here because I need to stop my connection. And when do we stop our connection? When the chat component is destroyed. So if I take a look at the home component, so inside open chat, if this is false, then display all this content. If this is true, then display chat component. But if we click on back to home, then becomes false and this will be destroyed. So we are going to make use of another cycle event, and that is on destroy. So instead of on init, we are going to have on destroy, and make sure on destroy is brought in here. Then I need to implement the interface, and we have ng on destroy. And whenever the component is destroyed, then this will be triggered. So whenever this triggered, we are going to say this dot chat service dot stop connection. So this stops the connection for that user connected through the browser. So if I save everything, and I'm going to restart my API application to get a new list for my dictionary, then I'm going to register. So the first one is John, and the second one is David. And this is David. So David would like to go back to home, and as long as they click on there, I get a new online users, and that online user doesn't have David anymore. Now I would like to add a little more styling for my online users, and I want the green color for my own name, but whoever else is connected should be black for me. So the way I do, I head back to chat component.html. Then I'm going to have an ng class. So in here, I'm going to have inside bracket ng class, and that's how we can assign some class if something is true, or assign some other class if something is not true. Then I open a curly brace, and in here I'm going to assign btn success, and then after the single quotation colon, then user is chat service dot my name. So if the user inside this for loop, the string value is equals to my name that we have stored inside the chat service, then apply this btn success. And I put a comma, and then assign btn dark. So assign btn dark class if user is not equals to chat service my name. So I copy this and I paste it in here, and I reformat Alt Shift F. So in this case, I need to remove btn success from here. So I'm going to add btn success if the name is equals to my name. Otherwise, for any other users, just add btn dark. So if I save, and at the same time, I need to restart my API to get a new list. Otherwise, John and David will be there. So I open the second tab, and inside one of my browser, I type John. So this is green because this is my name, and in here I put David. And John for David is black and David is green, but for John user, John is green and David is black. And I'm going to assign disable if that is the current username. So I put disable, I copy this and I paste, and I try to reformat, and then I remove this extra space, and this disable the button if this is my username. So if I just log in as John1, so this is disabled. I cannot click anymore. In this section, we're going to implement sending a message to everybody. So the first thing, we need to add a new component. So inside my second tab, I navigate to src and app, and then I type ng-gc, then I type chat input, and I skip test. Then in here, I remove the existing code, and I open my chat component.html, and I cut this, and I paste it inside my chat input. And I would like to use from ng-form. So the way I do, I need to first of all import ng-form inside my app module. So in here, after HTTP client, I put comma, and then here I type forms module from at Angular forms. So this is using the basic forms module, but previously we have used from reactive form module. So but this time we are going to make a use of just a regular basic forms module. So after I imported my forms module, then you can head back to chat input, and in here we are going to give it a name. So I put hashtag then message form. So this is the name of my form equals ng form. Then we're going to have a ng submit. So I put parentheses ng submit and then send message. So whenever the submit button is clicked and the form is submitted, then we are going to trigger this function. So I don't have that at the moment, so I copy this, and inside my chat input component.ts, I'm going to create my method. Then in here, we are going to have a content of type string, and we initialize to empty. Then we are going to make a use of two-way binding. So inside my input, after my type, the order doesn't matter, but I'm going to put it in here. So I put bracket and parentheses, then ng model equals content. So I'm binding my content from here to my input field, and then I'm going to make it as required. So I remove this extra equals quotation, and I'm going to make my submit disable if the message form is not valid. So I put a question mark, message form dot valid. And then inside my chat input dot component, then inside the send message, I have if list dot content dot trim. So for example, if the user has input only space, so we don't want to send that. So if it is not empty, then we are going to this dot content. Then we would like to send the content back to the parent component. And what is our parent component? The parent for chat input is chat. So in here we are going to have chat input over here. So I type app dash chat input and I close. So chat input is the child of chat component. I head back to my chat input dot component dot ts, and in here we are going to have dot output. So we would like to emit something to the parent component. Then I say content emitter is new event emitter, and we are going to import that from at angular.core. Then I put parentheses and I semicolon. Then if the content.trim is not empty, then this dot content emitter dot emit, and we emit this dot content. So since content is two-way binding, and whenever the user is inputting something inside this input field, so that means our content is changing the value as well. And we also would like to remove whatever the value is inside the content. So I say this dot content is empty string. So whenever the user clicks on submit, we would like to empty that content. So I head back to my chat component, which is a parent of chat input. Then in here, we are going to receive something from the child component. So we have to open and close parentheses. That's where we are receiving from the child. And we have content emitter. So content emitter is coming from the child. And then in here, we are going to call a method. So I name it as send message. And we pass $event. So I don't have this method inside my chat component. So inside my chat component, I'm going to create that function. And then I am receiving content as type string. Then I call my this.chat service send message. So I don't have that in here as well. And I send the content. So I'm going to create another method inside my chat service. So I copy this and I open my chat service. So just underneath here, I'm going to have async since this is a promise. So we are using async, and then send message and content of type string. And then we have to call a method inside our chat hub service. So I don't have that at the moment. So I'm going to create my method inside my chat hub. So just underneath add user connection ID, I'm going to have public async task, then receive message. Then I'm going to receive a message DTO and the name is message. Then we are going to await clients that group that, then the name of the group is come to chat. So I copy that and I put it in here. Then send async. Then we are going to trigger a function inside Angular, and then the name of that is new message. And we put a comma and we pass a message. And we don't have message DTO, so I copy this, and inside my DTOs I create a new class and I name it as message DTO. And what that message DTO will hold? 3 properties. So I make from and content as required. So make sure these two are populated. Then inside my chat hub, I need to bring message DTO from api.dtos. Then I can run my API application. And inside my Angular, I'm going to create a new model. So inside my models, I right click and new file. Then I name it as message.ts. Then I export interface. So from and content are required, to is optional. The same way we have described inside our message DTO. Then inside my chat service and inside my send message, create a message model. So I say const message of type message. And then in the next line, I say return this dot chat connection dot invoke. Then I'm going to open parentheses and then so this has to match, and then I pass my message object. And in case of any error, and another thing that we need to make sure is whenever we are binding my input into my Angular variable, so in this case we have content. So I need to have a name property as well. And my name should exactly match whatever I'm assigning to. So I copy content and I assign it into name. And if I save, and I would like to test my functionality. Then I open another browser. Then I log in as John. Then John would like to send some message. And inside my API, I have already the debugger inside my receive message. And if I try to send something, so for example, hi, I am receiving that hi in here. So inside my message model, I can see from is John and the content is hi and to is null. So with this in place, the next task is to create new message inside our Angular. So I copy this and I head back to my chat service. And inside here, I'm going to have this.chat connection.on. And then I paste that in here, new message. Then I have message as the argument. And then I have new message of type message. And inside my callback, I'm going to have an array just above here like our online users, but here we have messages, and then the type is message and array of message, and I initialize it to empty array. So inside here, whenever I receive a new message, I'm going to do the same thing as my online user. So I say this messages is spread operator, this dot messages and new message. Then I would like to have a separate component for my messages. So as of now, if I take a look at chat component, this is the dummy messages that we have created. So I'm going to remove pretty much all of it, only the last one. So we have some example of what to do. And then inside my second tab, I'm going to create a new component and I say ngGC messages and then skip test. And inside my messages, component.ts, I open that and I'm going to receive an array of messages. So I say input. So I'm receiving from the parent component and I name it as messages. And then the type is messages, message. And I put the bracket to make it array and I initialize it to empty array. And then inside my messages, I remove the existing code. Then inside my chat.component.html, I cut this part. So I cut this part and inside my messages, I paste it in here. And for my p tag, I'm going to have a for loop. So I say asterisk ng4 equals let message of messages. And then in here, we are going to have message dot from, and then inside here we are going to have message dot content, and inside my chat component.ts, so in here whatever I just cut, I'm going to have messages app dash messages, and then I'm assigning messages chat service dot messages, and I close. So with all this in place, if I save everything, then I register as John, and in here I register as David, and David is going to send hi. If I enter, and inside here I can see David has said something, and I'm from John, and I can see John is typing something else. In this video, we would like to implement the private message. So inside my chat hub, I'm going to have another method and I name it as public async task create private chat. And we are going to receive message DTO message. And that message DTO contains from and to and the content. First of all, we need to create a private group name, and that private group name is a combination of the name of the from and the name of the to whoever is trying to connect to. So inside my private methods, I'm going to have another private method. So I have private string and get private group name, and it takes string of from and string of to, and I'm going to return the combination of from and to in alphabetical order. So for example, if we have from John and to David, so this will return David dash John. In order to do that, we have var string compare equals string dot compare ordinal, and we have from and to, and we are checking against 0. If this is less than 0, then the string compare becomes true, otherwise it becomes false. So we return if the string compare is true, then return. Then I have a string interpolation and I have from dash to. Otherwise, I have another string interpolation and to dash from. So string.compare ordinal, it checks the from and to, and we are always going to return from alphabetical order. So David would come first and then John, because D is less than J. Then inside my create private chat, we are going to have string private group name equals get private group name, and we pass message.from and message.to. Then we are going to add the current connection ID to the group. So I say await groups dot add to group async and context dot connection ID, and we are going to add the current connection ID to the private group name, and then we are going to find the to connection ID. So whoever the from message is trying to contact, so I type var to connection ID equals chat service dot get connection ID by user, and we pass message dot to. So this method is returning the connection ID by the user. Then we are going to implement the functionality inside the to Angular side. Basically open a modal inside whoever the user is trying to contact to. So I say await clients dot client. So this is only for one single client, and that single client is to. And then I put to connection ID. That's how we can achieve that. And then send async and open private chat. Then we send the message. So in here, I put a comment, and then after this function, we are going to have another function, and I say public async task receive private message. And then we are going to receive a message DTO and message. Then again, we are going to retrieve the group private group name. I copy paste that here, and then we have await clients dot group and private group name dot send async and new private message, and we return the message. And in case they close the modal, I'm going to have a public async task remove private chat, and we are going to receive from and string of to. And again, we are going to retrieve the group name, so I copy and paste in here. And then inside here, we are going to have from, and here we are going to have to. And after here, we are going to have await clients dot group, and I copy the group name, then send async close private chat. And then I'm going to remove both users from the group name. So I have await groups that remove from group async, then the current connection ID and private group name. So we remove the current connection ID from this group name. And then we are going to retrieve the to connection ID. So from and to are two separate users. So from is the current user and the to is the other user. So for the other user, I'm going to have var to connection ID, and we have that functionality inside our chat service. So I say get connection ID by user and we pass to. And then I have await groups that remove from group async and to connection ID and private group name. So we're removing both connection ID from the private group name. So I head back to my chat component, and then inside my button, I'm going to give this a double click event. So I open parentheses and I select DBL click. So that means if the user has double clicked this button, and then I'm going to call a function called open private chat, and I pass the user. Then inside chat.component.ts, I have open private chat. This receive to user of string, and in order to use a private chat, we are going to use a modal. So if I open my browser and I navigate to ng Bootstrap and I select version 13, since we're using version 13, and inside the components, then I can click on modal. And then we are going to use components as content. So if the user is clicking the button, then a modal will appear, and that is going to be our private chat window. If the user clicks away, then the private chat closes. So in order to do that, we need to create a new component. So inside my second tab and inside my SRC app, I'm going to have a new component called nggc private chat. And I skip test. Then I open my private chat. Then I open my private chat component.ts. And in here we are going to have at input to user. And I initialize to empty string. Then we are going to have private active modal of ng active modal. So I select this one, and at the same time I'm going to inject public chat service of chat service, and we are going to implement on this row as well. So I implement that interface, and inside ng on this row we are going to have this chat service dot close private chat message, and we pass this dot to user, and in here we are going to have a send message, and we receive as content and of type string. Then we have this dot chat service dot send private message, and we send this dot to user and the content. Then inside my private chat dot component dot html I remove this, and I have I can see active modal is red because I need to make it as public. So I make it as public, then the error goes away. Then after here we have div. So in here I'm using the modal example as I showed here. So this is the code, and this is the modal.component.ts example. So I'm not going through very much of this, but basically, as I explained here, we are going to open a modal, and then if the user just clicks on X button, then this closes the modal. And inside my modal body, we are going to have the message functionality. So it displays all the messages, all the private messages, and then we are going to have the chat input component that we use for the public message as well. I have a bunch of error messages here because I don't have this inside my chat services. So I head back to my chat service, and just above here I have like messages. We are going to have private messages of type message array, and we initialize to empty array. Then we are going to have close private chat message. So I copy this, and inside my chat service I head down, and after send message I'm going to have async, and I paste that in here. I'm going to receive other user of type string. Then for simplicity, I copy this and I paste it in here. And for the name, we are going to have remove private chat. So I copy this, and then inside here, close private chat, we are going to invoke remove private chat. And then we are passing my name and as well as other user. Then I head back to private chat component.ts, and we are going to have this functionality inside chat service. So I copy this, and inside my chat service, just above close private chat, I'm going to have async and send private message. And we are going to receive two type string and content type string. Then again, I copy this from send message, and I make a message model. Then just above here, I'm going to have another variable, and I name it as private message initiated, and we initialize it to false. Then I head back to my send private message, and in here I'm going to have if not this private message initiated. If the private message has not initiated, then this private message initiated to true. Then we are going to invoke some chat hub functionality. So I copy this and I paste it down here, and I head back to my API, and I copy my create private chat because we are going to invoke this function inside our Angular, and I paste it inside here, and we send the message. And for then we are going to have callback function which receives nothing, and we are going to have this private messages is spread operator, this private messages, and we pass the message. And for the else part, again I copy this, and I paste it in here. And then for the function name, we are going to call receive private message, and I paste it in here, and we pass the message. Then I head to the top, and here I put a semicolon, and after here I'm going to copy this and paste it two more times. For the first one, we are going to have open private chat. So I copy this, and just here I'm going to paste it in here, and instead of this messages, we are going to add this private messages is the spread operator of this private messages, and we pass a new message. And then we are going to have this private messages initiated is true. Then we are opening the modal for the other user. So we say const modal ref is this dot modal service, and we don't have that at the moment. So we are going to inject the modal service. So after here, I have private modal service of type ngb modal, and then I head back to here, this dot modal service dot open, and inside the parenthesis we are going to give the component. So is private chat component. So basically this component, private chat component, and then we say modal ref dot component instance dot to user is message dot from is new message dot from. And for the second function, we are going to have receive private message. So I copy this and I paste it in here, and this is simply private messages, and I copy this and this private messages. Then I head back to my chat.component.ts, and in here we are going to inject private modal service of ngb modal, and inside my open private chat we are going to have const modal ref is this modal service dot open, and we pass the private chat component, and then we have modal ref dot component instance dot to user is to user. And then I head back to my chat service, and inside send private chat we are going to pass to inside our message model. So in order to do that, I just type to and comma, and then inside my create chat connection, so just underneath I receive private message, we are going to have another. So I copy this and I paste it down here, and we are going to have close private chat. So I copy this, and in here I'm going to paste it inside here, and we are receiving nothing. And then I remove this code. We are going to have this dot private chat initiated is false, so we are setting that to false. Then we are empty this dot private messages to empty array, and we say this dot modal service dot dismiss all. So we are closing the modal for the other user as well. So my receive private message inside my create chat connection should be renamed to new private message. So I copy this from my chat hub, and instead of receive private message, I'm going to have new private message. So I missed something inside my chat hub. Inside my create private chat, I'm going to have another await groups that add to groups async, and then I'm going to add the to connection ID to the private group name. So with all in place, I save my API and try to run my API, and I have saved everything inside my Angular side as well. Then I'm going to open two more browsers. So I have my first browser open, and I'm going to copy my link, and I open Chrome and I paste the URL in here. Then I'm going to open a new incognito window. So I paste the URL as well in here. The first one is John. I connect as John for the third browser. My middle browser I connect as David, and my first browser on the left I connect as Kyle. So John is trying to send a message to everybody. So he says hi, and my middle browser is David. So I'm going to send hello, and everybody can see. So my first browser is Kyle. Kyle is trying to connect to David. So I double click on David. As soon as I double click, I can see a new pop-up coming up, and that's a private message. And Kyle is trying to send David a private message. So he says, hi, David. And as soon as he sends, then I can see a new pop-up coming inside my middle browser, and that is David. So if I send, I can see Kyle has sent something, and David is trying to respond, nice to meet you. And once I send, Kyle has received a new message. Now it's time to make a production of our Angular application. So in order to do that, inside my VS Code, I open my angular.json, and just inside options, we have output path. In here, I'm gonna modify this, and I need to give it a path. So the path is going one level up, and inside API project, and then inside www.root. So this is going to be the path of the production of our Angular. And I scroll a little down, and in here I'm going to modify this to 2 megabyte and this one to 5 megabyte. So with this in place, I save my Angular, and inside my client app, I run the command of ng build. Okay, once that's done, I head to my Visual Studio and I can see www.root has been created. And this is holding the production build of my Angular site. So we would like to save our index.html inside our API project. In order to do that, I'm going to create a new controller. And this time I'm going to select controller from MVC. And I select empty. And I name it as fallback controller. I hit add and make sure this is driving from controller. Then we're going to have an index, and I change it to action result. And then instead of return view, we are going to return from a physical file. So I type physical file, path. So I bring path from system.io, .combine, directory, .get current directory. Then I put a comma, and then I give it the path, which is www.root. And then I make comma, and then index.html. Then after this parenthesis, I put comma and then text HTML. So this is the physical path of my index.html. And after this, I open my program.cs. And just after app.map-hop, I'm gonna have app.map fallback to controller. So I select this one. And for the action, I put index and then comma, and then this one is the controller, and the name of the controller is fallback. So make sure this is in lowercase, since we have specified this fallback in lowercase, and this is index action. And then just below use authorization, we need to have app.use default files, and then app.use static files. And with this in place, I save everything and I run my project from IIS Express. So I choose this one, I hit the run button. Then I open properties launch settings.json, and then I copy this link and I paste it inside my browser. So it automatically puts the new SSL. That's what I saw here. So 44398. And now I can see my Angular project is running from my API project. So I can just give it a test. And now I can see everything is working as expected. In this section, I would like to publish my API project into Azure and make this available to the internet. So I stop my application and you need to log into your Azure portal. And if you don't have Azure account, you need to create yourself an Azure account. So just search for Azure portal, and then from azure.microsoft.com account free. So select this link, and you can start free if you don't have an account, or pay as you go if you already have an account. So you need to have your credit card approved inside the application, and then you can create your own account, or even you can sign up using your GitHub account. And after you have created your Azure portal account, then you can click on resource group. So resource group is basically like a folder. So we would like to create a folder for us, and we choose the name as come to chat resource. And I hit review plus create, and then I hit create. So my resource has been created. Then inside my Visual Studio, I need to log in into my whatever account you're using. And after that, you right click on your API project and hit publish. And then we select Azure. And then here Azure App Service Windows. And then you have to see your account in here. Then you select create new. And you can see your resource that you just created, come to chat resource. And from here, you name your application. So I name it as come to chat. And that name is available. If this is not available, then you need to choose another name. And from the hosting plan, I click new, and then inside size, I select the dropdown and I choose free. So in order to publish our application for free. Otherwise, we are going to be charged for some dollars per month. So make sure to click this one. And then I click OK and create. And then select next. And then skip this step and finish. And now you can close this window. And then you need to hit publish. So this is trying to publish our website into our Azure account. So this takes some time, but be patient, then eventually this will publish your website. Once that is successfully published, then I can see this is the URL that I put, come-to-chat.azurewebsite.net. So this was the end of the course, and I hope you have enjoyed the course and you learned something useful for your own application or for your own project. And I wish you all the best.